Hey everyone, we're back for an official episode 1, I guess, of the Reckoner Live podcast. Thank you for joining us. You might have noticed that the intro music was missing there. That is my fault. But joining me as always, none other than Mr. Anthony Aegis. How are we, Ant?
Good, very good to be back for episode 1.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's what I'm calling it. I don't know really. Like it's kind of episode 300 and something or other, but
Yeah,
episode 1 as well.
episode 1 of where you can see us.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, and people were happy that we were back.
People still have it in their podcast feed, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know how. I think all the feeds that we had running were basically turned off over the last 6 months or so of not paying any attention to them. But there were a couple that I had to kickstart again. But here we go.
Did you manage to get access to the main one? Like, I think the
iTunes? The iTunes one. That took a little deep dive. I had to get Apple to reassign the owner to me, and they couldn't tell me who owned it, so it was none of us.
So how did that happen?
I don't know. So or it was someone that had an account that just they're not using anymore or something like that. But we couldn't get into it. So but we can now. So that's good. Well, I mean, we didn't really have a plan for the pilot, and I'm going to be honest here, we don't really have a plan for this one either. But I thought it would be really good to touch on something that you and I are pretty good at talking about over the years, and that's Apple products. Yeah. So let's talk a little iPhone, shall we? Because I mean that's been across the news, and we're 12 iterations in, Ant, of iPhone.
Well, it came out 2007, iPhone?
Yeah, somewhere around there. I have no idea, to be honest, mate.
I asked Siri, but I haven't got any Siri devices near me.
You probably get the wrong answer anyway.
Yeah. Hey Google, we've got Google stuff here.
2007, you are correct.
Yeah. So
June 29th.
It's hard to imagine now a time without a smartphone. Like there's pre-smartphone and post-smartphone eras. Like you can see it on TV shows. Oh yeah, that's obviously before smartphones were a thing, and every TV show or movie made after the smartphone has one in there. So it's weird thinking it's been 13 years of this little black rectangle sitting in the pocket.
It's pretty crazy, right? Like how much it's changed our lives.
And how many they've sold. Like it's the computer that everyone has. Like back in the 80s, everyone thought, right, everyone's going to have a computer on their desk in their house, and that didn't really happen. Lots were sold, but I don't think they crossed anywhere near the kind of penetration of what the smartphone was. The smartphone has been the computer for the people, not a Windows or a Mac, not a box and a big screen. It's a little device that sits in your pocket. That's been the computer for most people, and everywhere. And with that, we also got the internet everywhere. Like there's very little parts of the world now where you can't go and get an internet signal. And you can go to most parts of Australia that are populated, and you'll get internet just on demand. Take out your pocket, you got fast internet. That's like a 1980s sci-fi movie. Like a globally connected network in your pocket, they can access that at any time. Now that's just like run of the mill average. Like, oh yeah, cool, I got LTE. Why isn't it fast enough? Like that's the problem that we have now. So it's like the smartphone's been that technological change that's like was a sci-fi plot in the 70s and 80s, and is now run-of-the-mill, very normal and everywhere. And for like $10, you can buy a smartphone that does all those things.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, it's just expected, that we have this, and like kids today are just this is. I mean, I don't know what's the equivalent for you and I. Like, we grew up with, I don't know, dot matrix printers. I don't know. That's the expected, or PCs. Like PC, like your computer is essentially like we expect a computer to be this thing on our desk that can do all of these amazing things and run spreadsheets and all and you, like our parents before, like trying to do a spreadsheet was like impossible.
Lost.
Yeah. Now you can do it all on like this, tiny little thing.
There are people now who, like, there are kids who don't know how to use it. Like, you put them in front of a keyboard and mouse, and they don't quite know what to do with it. But you get them on a phone or a tablet, and they're just like wizards. So I kind of feel like an old man whenever I see kids using their phones and their tablets to create stuff, because I feel like they've moved on from this. They've found a different way to do this stuff.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Like my 12-year-old nephew is just like walks up to everything and thinks that it's like a touch screen. Like just puts his hands all over it. Fully expects it to sort of react in some way, whether it's a glass window or like a TV screen. Like he'll stand in front of my dad's like 65-inch TV about 3 inches away from it and just sort of like touch things and expect it to move or change. Yeah. And the picture is changing, so I assume he thinks he's doing it. So it's pretty fun to watch. But I guess speaking of faster and like you've got access to this cellular like LTE network and so forth, the big thing that everyone was talking about with the iPhone 12 or what they wanted us to talk about is 5G, which literally
5G.
Comes to every model.
5G, yes.
Faster
than 4G.
Faster than 4G, doesn't cause coronavirus.
Well, depends who you ask. Who's paying your age? Who's saying it doesn't cause it? What kind of thumb are you under? Who's
government conspiracy sort of? Faster. Maybe Malcolm Turnbull's paying me to spruik 5G. He was a big proponent of 5G, right? Like he always wanted to. What's the point of doing fibre to the home when we're going to have 5G? Yeah, cool. Thanks, mate. Yes. Well, I mean, Apple. Some people were expecting them to do it last year, but they finally got around to it this year. And every model, whether it's from the new iPhone 12 Mini all the way up to the iPhone 12 Pro Max, 5G included, no extra. No extra, no less, I guess, for that amount. But 5G across the board. And then now we're seeing telcos who have typically bolted on 5G as an add-on, like Telstra. Well, I mean, you really only got. Does Vodafone have 5G out now?
They do technically. They've got like 3 sites.
Yeah.
So technically they do, but really they haven't rolled it out yet. But they will over time. Yeah.
So really, you're paying Optus or Telstra the privilege of using 5G if you're living in a CBD area that happens to be within stone's throw of a tower. I know where I am right now. I'm about 6k out of the CBD in Adelaide. No 5G.
In Melbourne and Sydney, it's decent, but the problem is the frequency that they're using. They're not often in the higher range of the frequency. So it makes it difficult to get indoor signal. So you can get it indoors if you're in a very strong location, but if you're on the fringe of it, you might only get it outdoors. So that kind of makes it a bit, hit or miss. But yeah, for most people, 5G is not really the reason to buy this. I don't know anyone who is buying this phone because it's like, sweet, 5G, I can get faster access on my phone. Like, it makes very little difference. In Australia, in America, they have a different 5G plus what we're getting to. There's 2 kinds of 5G. There's the low frequency 5G, which is like under like 4 gigahertz. So that uses the pretty much it's the same as the 4G that we have now. But then there's a thing called millimeter wave 5G, and that takes place in the much higher frequency range of like 60 gigahertz, and that's designed to be like really huge bandwidth. So like those like uh, gigabit speeds, they're usually on millimeter wave 5G because they have a lot more bandwidth in that part of the spectrum to dedicate to each phone, because it's that high up in the frequency range is actually not used for very much. There's heaps of space spare. Whereas the lower down in the frequency range you get, it's very useful frequencies for like TV, radio, 4G, wireless communication for like handheld radios and stuff like that. So that's the precious good wireless signals. Whereas up high in the range, they're not as useful because they can't go as far because they're so high pitched that the frequency is higher. They have trouble penetrating walls and glass and metal and things like that. So they're actually very short range, but in some places they're actually very useful because if you're outdoors in dense cities like Singapore or Hong Kong or New York or San Francisco, there's just not enough spectrum in the lower range to get everyone's devices on at once. I don't know if you've ever been to a conference in like a big American city and AT&T just shoots the bed. It's just because there's just too many radios in the one spot. This kind of helps with that because you can have a lot more devices on the one tower, but the range is very limited, so it's kind of only useful in dense cities. And America has a few of those millimeter wave networks, whereas in Australia we don't. So in America, the 5G, the iPhone 12 has a little window on the side, kind of where your thumb goes. It kind of almost looks like a Touch ID sensor. People thought it was that, but it's actually a little antenna for 60 gigahertz millimeter wave 5G. And it'd be interesting to see how useful that actually is in real world. In America, I think Verizon or AT&T are the ones that have it, and it's faster. Like you can get hundreds of megabytes a second, slightly lower latency, but only in very select regions. So in practice, I don't know how useful it is. In Australia, we haven't got it on our phones, and there's no networks that support it. And so there's not many of those networks around the world right now.
So if 5G isn't a draw card for Australians, and we had Bill comment in the broadcast whilst you were talking there that millimeter wave is such a short range and can be blocked by almost anything. So how good is 5G when you're firing up? You don't even need to fire up your microwave. You just need to be in the house using your microwave, or in the kitchen. So why are people using or wanting? What's the draw card? Why are we upgrading? Because we ran a poll on the Twitter account the other day for who's upgrading, essentially, like who's going to buy the iPhone 12, and it was basically 50% of the people either have already bought an iPhone 12 or are waiting for the Mini or the Pro, which isn't coming out or isn't available for pre-order until November or something, November 16th ish.
I think the 7th, and they get sold on the 16th.
Yeah, and then another quarter were just like, there's nothing to upgrade for. Like, I don't really need this. And then the other quarter, they picked the what I thought would be the most popular. Fuck Apple.
Well, very, very popular sentiment.
Yeah. So, like, why upgrade? Like, what's the attraction here?
I mean, for most people with a year or two old phone, there isn't much really. I mean, probably the biggest difference I could see on the iPhone 12 is the iPhone Mini, the iPhone 12 Mini. People might like that smaller phone. That one's been very. Like, I see a lot of people I know who have an iPhone 11 or an iPhone 10 buying that one because they want a phone that's not so huge with good specs, and the iPhone 12 Mini does that. That's quite nice. The iPhone 12 Pro Max, the camera in that, so the telephoto they call it, which is the 50mm camera on it, the sensor in that, the camera sensor, is actually really big for a smartphone. it should take photos better than any smartphone we've seen before. Kind of almost as good as the professional point and shoot cameras. So the kind of fancy PowerShot Canons and the Sony RX series. The camera's as good as that on the iPhone Pro Max, iPhone 12 Pro Max. So that's why I'm buying it.
But it would want to be, right? Like, what are we looking at for the iPhone 12 Pro Max?
Well, at $1,850.
Yeah,
it's an expensive beast.
Like, not only is that the cost of, like, what, a Canon M50 is probably around $500-600 now with a decent sensor in it. Like, and a smartphone will set you back $1,100, $1,200, $1,300. Combining the two, we're still under that bracket. So it's purely like a convenience factor that we're getting everything in one, essentially. And shooting that Dolby Vision 4K video.
That said, the video aspect of the iPhone is actually pretty good. Like, if you want a video camera that does 4K, you have to spend at least like $3 or $4 on like a proper, like, camcorders are dead. Like, I don't even know if you can buy them anymore. Like, who's buying camcorders? The iPhone camera is better. Like, it's got a bigger sensor, it's got better quality lenses. Like, you can actually do like 3 different, like the zoom lens on most of those camcorders are just garbage. It's actually nicer to have these lenses that are on the iPhone Pro Max, and you can edit it right on the device and post it directly from the device. Just a way better. For video, I think the iPhone's like probably the best camera that you can buy that's not like a Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera.
Yeah.
Like, you either buy that the Blackmagic camera, or an iPhone. There's nothing under else besides the iPhone, or maybe like a GoPro, but they're only good for the wide angle shots. They look kind of stupid if you're not.
Yeah.
Depending on what you're actually doing. So, yeah, those are the 3 cameras. And whereas before you'd have like tons of camcorders, they're just dead. Whereas with cameras, like still cameras, there's still like a reason to buy a DSLR or a mirrorless camera. That should look quite nice because of their bigger sensor. But on the Pro Max 12, it's really, you need, if it's not an ASPC, so APS-C sensor, like the large-ish sensor, you're wasting your time. Like, this camera's going to be probably better quality than almost every camera that's not like a DSLR or a mirrorless with the changeable lens kind of thing. Like, that size sensor, anything under, may as well not even bother.
Yeah, I had a friend who has, they're pregnant and they're about to have their first child. And he was talking to me the other day, this is before the iPhone 12 was announced. He's just like, well, you know, you're into photography, you like cameras, we're going to have our first kid, what should I be getting? And I'm like, what do you want to take photo? Like, is it just of the your newborn? And it's like, what's the goal here? It's like, yeah, we want to take better photos of our new baby, and that means getting a, DSLR. And I'm like, why? Like, do you want to learn how to use all of those things on a DSLR? Like, is that really something that you want to invest the time and effort in understanding? Or is it just the perception that you're going to get better photos out of it? Because really, the reality is you're going to get photos, if not better, with the smarts that are built into the phones these days, paired with the sensors that are on them, that there's no point. Like, unless you truly are like a professional photographer or a budding professional, or you're an amateur hobbyist that's going down that path, that want to learn and grow your skill sets in photography, stick with a smartphone. Like, they're virtually pumping out the same megapixels anyway these days. There's no point. Mind you, they sit in Android land, so they wanted the S20 to do which is fine. Like, it's a great phone with like a really robust array of like cameras on it. So, but you're probably losing out on a few little bits and pieces that you might get with a Pro Max, or even just Google's own software and processing in the pixels. So for you, like Amp, because I know you're buying one, you're buying a Pro Max 12.
The big one that won't fit in my pocket.
Yeah, I've had a Max in the past.
Yeah.
I didn't love it. I went back to a regular on the 11, and I skipped the 10s. I'm not in a rush to go back to having something that's bigger than every pocket that I have on my jeans. And even with the camera, like I'm okay with waiting a year for that to come down and trickle down into all the others, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I had the 7 Plus, which I think was the first big phone, or was it the 6 Plus? I had the very first one.
Yeah, I think it was the 7.
Yeah, well, was it? Maybe it was the 6S Plus, but
Yeah.
whatever the first one Apple made was, I got that one, and I hated it. I was like, oh, it's too big for my pocket. I couldn't hold it with one hand. I didn't like it, so I always stuck with like the smallest one that they had. But now the camera is actually significantly better in the Pro Max, so I figure I'll give it another shot because I've been using an Android phone. This TCL thing. It's I forgot what it's called. TCL 10 Pro. That's it, and it's quite large, and I've gotten used to it. So I'll put up with the Pro Max. And worst case, it's just a year. I'll get the 13 whenever that comes out.
Yeah. See, I was come like pre-order day for the 12 was last Friday. I was like, yes, I'm gonna get a 12. I don't know why. I'm not really sure. Is it the better battery life? Is it I think probably the most attractive thing is just them going back to the squared off edges on the phone. I think that's probably the most enticing feature on this entire lineup for me is not having those stupid round corners that have it slide out of your hands constantly. Yeah. I don't understand why they ever went away from that, but anyway, we're back to it, so that's the important thing. Personal preference. I think that out of everything is the most exciting feature to me about these phones, which is kind of sad and had me at sort of 9 o'clock on Friday going, oh yeah, I'm going to wait up 2 hours and pre-order, because pre-order started at 11 p.m. Really, really convenient time for everyone. And then it got to about 10:30 and I was like, you know what? I just can't be asked. Like, what's the point? Yeah, I'm going to go to bed. If I change my mind in the morning and there's still some available, or on launch day I really want one, I'll go get one. But it's not worth it. And the one that is the most exciting to me, that I'm really keen on, is the Mini. But I don't want to go back to just having the 2 lenses, because I use the 3 that's on the 11 so often without even knowing that I'm using it. And that, like, I had a sort of semi-faux career back in photography way back in the day, and like taking photos, but am satisfied by just using an iPhone. So I like that sort of added functionality, but I don't want to go to the max to get that super big, sensor and extra level of stuff. But yeah, now that I didn't like the wave of that excitement of getting a new phone has washed over, I'm okay with not buying a new phone.
Well, you fought through the distortion field.
Yeah, pretty much. Like it's just like, oh yeah, new iPhones. Like it's just this weird sort of trigger in I don't know, my head or a lot of people's heads. It's like you've got to have it.
I haven't bought a new iPhone since the iPhone 10, so I've been good boy. I've waited 3 years to buy a new iPhone. So
yeah, well, that was me before getting the 11, and now I'm back on the juice.
Once a year, 12 months, yeah, right in front of me.
Thanks, Tim Cook. But I didn't watch any of the actual event.
I still haven't seen it, which is kind of odd. I actually forgot about it because like read the news the day after. All right, I've read it all enough. I've written about it for the sizzle. I'm done. But I actually haven't watched the event, and I can't remember the last time I haven't watched an iPhone event. So I should probably watch it at some point.
Yeah, like the whole virtual thing, it is really weird to me. Like there's nothing wrong with and it's really no different to if they were doing it in front of a crowd of tech journos or not. But just the actual appeal of watching the event is really, really low, and that could also be just because I know what's like. We know what's happening so far in front these days that it's not really that interesting. Like Mac Rumors had so much information on their website before this thing came out that you literally knew exactly what it was like, what it was going to look like. They had like renders of the casings. They had knew every spec down to the last minute. Like there was nothing exciting about the event whatsoever. I don't know if Apple have joined the bandwagon of just kind of like leaking their own stuff out now, or it's just gotten so difficult that they can't not.
It's just harder because I mean I know this iPhone was late, like because it was normally they come out in about September-ish, but because of coronavirus they had to hold it back. So I'm pretty sure that gave more time for the factory workers or the accessory manufacturers just to be tempted to get things out there rather than wait a week or two, then it's official. Instead of it being a week or two, it was like a month or two instead, and you just can't hold a secret for that long in that kind of industry with that many people holding that secret. So it just came out.
Yeah, it's very different to back in the day. Us old sort of Apple nerds, like back in the day when you were clamoring for any bit of information, and it's like this tiny tidbits come out over here, and it's like, what could it be? And it's like, it's a mouse. So it's like it really doesn't matter. Now it's like with people like Evan Blass and stuff on Twitter, just literally leaking every single render and marketing piece of material that comes out for every phone. It's pretty nuts, but yeah. So I guess when we're getting down to it, Ant, the reason you're getting the iPhone 12 Pro Max is really just because you think you need to reward yourself for taking a year off.
Yeah. I mean, I could keep using the Pixel 3 I've got. It works fine.
Yeah,
it's not bad. It takes photos because this TCL phone has to go back to TCL soon. I don't know why they want it back, but normally they usually let me keep it. But they said this one's only for 3 weeks. So, but the Pixel I bought myself for $300 off eBay from a professional refurbishing place, and it works fine. But I miss the iPhone. I miss iOS. I kind of check in every now and then on Android just to see how they're going, and the Apple stuff is nicer. As much as I hate Apple these days for how they treat the developers, it's a way nicer phone to use. It's just a lot smoother. Just lots of little things that like on Android, like on this TCL phone, it's just the curved edges are just awful because often there'll be like a button on the edge of the screen that I can't press because it's got a curved edge. And there's like an anti-edge rejection thing, so that if you're holding the phone and you touch the edge, it doesn't accept the input. Mm-hmm. But there's a button on the edge, like on the keyboard, it just doesn't accept the input. And it's like, that's really stupid. Like I can't press like the 0 number button on the keyboard because it's in the zone where you're not supposed to press. So you have to touch it like in a weird angle, and I miss it half the time. And the fingerprint reader is under the screen on it.
Yeah.
And it works half the time. Like it's just so slow to find your finger. And I've put in multiple fingers, and it's like it takes ages to kind of unlock
pick it
the
up
phone.
Yeah.
So and the camera on it's very average. It's got 4 cameras on the back of it, It's supposed to have a fancy 64 megapixel camera. They're so like they're not sharp at all. Like I don't know if it's just me not holding still enough, but they're just not sharp photos. Like they're just like the detail is really like it really smooths them out, and there's almost no detail when you zoom in. Whereas my iPhone 10 pictures have more detail in them, and they're from away on the phone.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I wasn't impressed.
I've always like the edge detection stuff. Like the Galaxy
Yep.
Edge? Yeah,
Yeah.
Galaxy Edge. First one that did it. And why do people want the display to wrap around? Like, what's the point?
It is bad. Like it is a dumb, stupid feature. Like it's a worse experience, not just from using it how your hands touch the edges, but the image on the screen is distorted. Like the edge of the screen is like curved, and the colors are off because it's not at the right level. It's just it's clearly a gimmick. Like it has no practical purpose at all.
Yeah, very strange. And there's still like TCL there making that one. There's plenty of manufacturers out there like really clamoring to do this whole sort of wrapped edgy stuff.
Yeah.
And making no sense whatsoever. But I guess it impresses someone. It looks good in marketing. It's another feature that you can sort of...
I think that's about it. It just looks good in marketing. That's all I can think of. Because I don't know how anyone uses this day to day and goes, "This is better than a flat screen."
Yeah. Just jumping back to the Apple event there, they actually have the entire Apple jumping on the event in X seconds bandwagon. They've done it themselves, so you don't actually have to watch the whole thing.
It was all seconds, much apples.
Apple event in 51 seconds, and then they've cut together their own sort of footage to go along with it.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. Ceramic shield, that's another big thing they went on about. These crystal-like things going into the new screen that's on the iPhones. 4 times
well, now the back of it's not glass anymore, which is fantastic. Because I hated the back glass on the iPhone 10. It's so easy to shatter. Like you drop it, you got the back and the front stuff. So, whereas now it's back to metal, which is cool. And the MagSafe stuff's kind of interesting for accessories.
Yeah, I mean, it seems so simple, right? The MagSafe stuff, like just stick a magnet in there, and just like slap everything on, and away you go. And you assume that it's quite rigid. Like if I've got a pocket on there that's got a couple of credit cards or something like that, mind you, not that you technically need something with credit cards, but your license or something like that. Mind you, in South Australia, you can have a digital license.
And Queensland. And New South Wales.
What's going on, Victoria?
Too busy trying to stop the coronavirus.
That's insane. But a friend of mine here in Adelaide still has to carry the license because he tried to use the digital one somewhere, and they said, no, we can't accept it. I can't remember where it was. It wasn't like at a
pub or something.
Nah, it was something weird like, I don't know, like getting a passport or something. But anyway, they just flat out said, no, you need your actual license, which is, I don't know, fair enough, I guess. But, that the idea of not carrying around, any wallet whatsoever is extremely enticing. I would love that. All they need to do is fix Mikey to let you use NFC on an Apple, and introduce a digital license in Victoria. I'd be set.
Yeah, that's all my cards as well. Pretty much, I just use my driver's license, really. The rest I could probably just get away with, and some cash. I usually have some cash on me at some point just in case, but I could probably get away with it. So
yeah, I don't even do that anymore. I had to get cash out to buy a Bunnings sausage yesterday, and it was like, what do you mean you don't have EFTPOS? And especially with COVID, like why can't I just tap and go? Like
just get one of those little Square or PayPal readers and just tap. They're free now. I think Square give them away for free if you use their their payment processor. So.
The point of sale order. So the guy was like, "Oh, you can just go into any register and they'll give you cash out." And I'm like, "Oh, okay. What is this? Like 1999 or 2001?" Anyway, so that was an experience. But mind you, I'm lucky I can go to Bunnings in the first place. So
yeah, true. I don't know what a Bunnings is anymore. Actually, that's not true. The Bunnings here are open, but there's no sausages. So that's really what's the point of going?
Yeah. If you're not getting a sausage, you're not going to Bunnings. Like,
no.
It's just...
May as well just buy it online.
So the other thing that was announced at the Apple event last week was the HomePod Mini, which I wasn't personally expecting, but I assume other people were or had it on their radar, and is a thing that people might actually want, apparently. So the HomePod, which is Apple's smart speaker, I'm sure everyone knows about that, have now been shrunken down into this sort of like orb-like thing. I find that the video for introducing this thing is one of the most disturbing like pieces of graphic, because it looks like, I'm just going to pause this video. It looks like one of those dust mite microscopic level images, and it does not resonate well with my brain. All I'm thinking about is like some weird cleaning commercial on TV that's showing me how disgusting my bed linen is or something. Like it's quite disturbing what's going on inside my head right now. But anyway, apparently it's their way of introing the fact that when they zoom out, obviously, that it's a HomePod Mini, which look, I think is kind of cool. But I don't know anyone that wants one.
Well, the thing is, it's not as smart, anywhere near as smart as the Google or Alexa ones. It's just not. You can't ask it the same kind of stuff. You can't really. Siri is just not as good. So if you do use a lot of that stuff to ask it questions or make it do things for you, you're not going to get this, because HomeKit, for starters, has way less things you can integrate with it than
definitely
Alexa and the Google stuff, and it just doesn't work as well. It just can't do the full range of stuff. So really, it's really relying on how good is it as a speaker. For $150, how does it sound compared to a Ultimate Boom or a Sonos One kind of thing? At that price point.
And it's not cable free. It doesn't have a battery in it like the new Sonos Move or anything like that. It's a wired device, kind of like the Echo Dot, but with the potential to sound a lot better. Like the Echoes are pretty average at best, even the ones that are advertised as sound devices rather than just being dumb.
Yeah. I've never liked the Amazon and the Google speakers for music. They just sound awful. Even the Max, for what it costs, wasn't very. The price just blew it away, and it costs less. But the HomePod, the bit bigger HomePod, actually sounded very, very good. Like, that was probably one of the best speakers in that price that you could buy. So that we should see how Apple does with the Mini for $150. So I'm looking forward to seeing what that sounds like.
Yeah, I think $150 is a good price point to pique my interest. I have zero interest in using this thing for its smarts. I have no need for this other than just, does it sound good in a room that I don't already have Sonos in, which is pretty much none of them. But could it serve a purpose in one way or another? And for my peace of mind, I just want to know that it sounds good, or it sounds better than other devices. And yeah, that price point is enough to sort of make me go, or I'll just use the Apple library policy, which is, return it in 2 weeks and then basically get it for free to try it out. So and I don't mind the shape of it as well. I always the pattern that they have on top, like the little screen display on top of the HomePod, they've got a better version of it on the Mini, and that looks quite nice. But yeah, it's different. The other thing is that you can't pair them. So unlike the bigger version, which you can have like sort of this stereo pair, you can't do that or use the Mini as like satellite speakers for a home theater. Or you'd think with Apple TV and the TV service that they would be sort of encouraging the use of these types of products in some sort of, you know, home theater setup, or especially the you know, if you've got one of the larger ones at the front, that maybe that does, you know, your center channel and your voice, so your left, right, and then you've got a couple of satellites going or something. But other than communicating with other Minis in other rooms, it doesn't really do anything else.
Yeah.
So
you can pair two Minis to be a stereo pair. You can do that.
you can do that. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you can't get a big HomePod and a little HomePod
And
make
use them
work
together. Yeah. Which, yeah, it just seems kind of strange that you wouldn't have that cross functionality, and whether that comes down to something like, you'd think they'd be able to do that with software and stuff.
I reckon it's because the HomePod, because it's the HomePod Mini actually has an Apple Watch CPU in it. So the Series 6 Apple Watch and the HomePod Mini run on the same hardware, whereas the HomePod has I think it's an A8 CPU, so the same as the Apple TV.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that's why. Maybe
would make sense. I know there's people like hardcore HomeKit people out there.
Well,
but
I argue with them, people suffering from Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah.
Because HomeKit's the crappiest one of all of them. Like Google's platform's actually really good. Tons of stuff supports it, and even the cheapo stuff does it, and it's really easy to use. And it's cross platform. But HomeKit's only on iOS.
Yeah.
So if you've got someone in your house who uses Android, they can't use any of this home stuff. So.
Yeah, I think one of the first things that most people say to me when, oh yeah, I use HomeKit and I really enjoy it, is then they follow that up with like, oh, I use Homebridge, which sort of allows me to like connect it on to other networks and stuff. It's just like HomeKit on its own just isn't doing the job. And the other thing which is really interesting about the announcement with the Mini was that like they were going on about all these services that you can use on the Mini. Like, oh, we've got like Pandora and TuneIn and you know, Apple Music and blah, you know, all this other Amazon.
The one that I actually want.
Yeah.
On Spotify.
Spotify.
Is not there.
the conveniently left out the music service that they don't want anyone to use. Yeah. So again, that automatically puts it in a bucket of, well, I don't have Apple Music, so why would I use this, or why would I go out and buy this? And obviously they're making way more money off of Apple Music subscriptions than they're ever going to make off of a HomePod Mini. So I can understand them not entertaining that idea. I think that was about it, really. Like, the other thing they talked about at the event was the fact that they're not including headphones and cables in the boxes anymore.
They say it's for the environment, but really, come on.
Yeah.
The headphones I can kind of semi-understand. People usually have their own preferences for them, and they actually did reduce the price of the headphones, so you can actually buy them separately for like $20 now, I think. But not having a charger in the box is a bit annoying, because the cable it comes with is a USB-C cable. So if you haven't got a USB-C charger, which none of the previous iPhones did, you'd have to buy one from somewhere. It was a bit annoying to change the cable and not give a charger. That was annoying. If it was a USB-A cable that they didn't include, that they included, all right, there's millions of those chargers around. In my house, there's at least a dozen sitting in a box. But USB-C chargers are actually I haven't got any that are just USB-C. So
I don't think, I mean, the only ones that I've got are like what comes with the MacBook Pro or a Nintendo Switch, excuse me, the USB-C. But I'm not going to use that to charge my phone most of the time. So, yeah, interesting. and the packaging that they showed off was like, half the size because they're not including these things, and so we can pack 2/3 more into a shipping container when they go. I was like, I get your messaging. I don't believe it at the end of the day. And if that was the case, lower the price of the damn phones.
Yeah. Well, actually, interesting because this year the price didn't go up, so I think they just. I otherwise think the price would have gone up, but instead they just kept it the same price as last year, which, all right, that's unusual for Apple. Normally the price goes up.
Yeah. Well, yay! Good on you for only charging us $2,000 for your top of the line iPhone, for crying out loud. What else? I think we've whipped the Apple horse to death. And what else happened in the world of tech last week that was something that we might have missed in your wonderful newsletter, Ant?
Yeah, let me
the sizzle.
Bring that up. So I actually do write every day about this technology stuff, which is
you probably should know what you wrote about. You would have thought.
Yeah. So what I wrote is on the weekends I put out like a summary email for the free subscribers. So it's actually quite a boring week. Probably the most interesting thing was in Canberra's election. So the ACT had an election on Saturday, and because of COVID, there's no democracy sausages. So normally you go to the election to vote, and you get a sausage. You couldn't. They're banned because of COVID. So what Alphabet, which is Google's parent company, did, they have a division called Wing, which has drones that fly around Canberra and some parts of Queensland, dropping off so you use an app kind of like Uber Eats to order food, but instead of it coming through a person on a bike or on a car, they deliver it in a drone. And for Saturday, they were giving out free sausages in bread in a drone. I don't know how that works. Surely the bread would have opened up, or they must have had a special container to keep them all wrapped up tight. I mean, like a rubber band around sausage. I don't know, but they were delivering drone sausages across some parts of Canberra.
Wow.
To people who ordered them. So it would land in your backyard or in your street, and you'd pick it up and it would go away. Go get the next sausage and deliver it to the next person.
That's cool. And a bit weird. I remember Wing doing their first early trials with some chemist or something in the ACT.
Yep, they're still doing it, and apparently it's been very popular. There's 350% increase in the last month.
Wow!
Because of COVID, people couldn't go to places, so they've been
getting
getting drone deliveries, and people like it. It's been working fine. Apparently, they're still super noisy. I don't know how the neighbours feel about it, but people are using it. People want their drone deliveries. I think what the issue, why I like it is not so much that it's by a drone, but that it comes right away.
Yeah. Rather
than having to wait a few hours or something. Whereas these shops that are on the service can do delivery hour, just up a drone to you, rather than having to wait for a batch deliveries, or the shop is too small to have they're on other platforms. So I think that's the appeal, not so much a drone coming. It's here now. I don't have to wait 6 hours. It'll come in 10 minutes or 20 minutes.
I can tell you another interesting thing that happened last week that we can touch on briefly, and that is AMD's announcements with the new CPU, the new Ryzen line, and then they teased out the new GPUs, which I think they're announcing in a couple of weeks now. But the CPUs look good, like really competitive stuff. Especially in the gaming space, if you're someone that's looking to build out your new rig, the new Ryzen 9 series, the 5900s and the 5800s, I've never owned an AMD machine before. I've always sort of stuck to the Intel line of they've been doing it the longest and they should know what they're doing. But when you see how well AMD are doing right now, it's not just in the CPU but in the GPU space as well. Like, it's it gives you food for thought about whether maybe or not. Maybe I should, that next PC, I'll switch motherboards and jump ship.
Yeah, I mean, the latest Ryzen specs, there's still no benchmarks out that are not from AMD, so I don't trust them 100%. But technically, they should be, because even though Intel, because the past kind of few years, Intel's been been worse because AMD's had more cores on the same CPU for less money. So if you're doing a multi-core process like encoding video or compressing files, things like that, that's a lot faster because there's just more cores. At the same price point, the AMD CPU would have 6 cores, whereas the Intel CPU would have 4 cores. It's just a no-brainer, even if the per clock instruction performance is slower, because you've got more cores, it's going to be faster. But with this latest generation of CPUs, the Ryzen 5000 series is actually faster with the same amount of cores at the same frequency than the similar Intel CPU. And that hasn't happened for about maybe 15 years or so since the Athlon 64 days.
Oh,
that
man,
was
the Athlon. Damn, yeah. I forgot about the Athlon.
Yes, that was kind of the first, back then, when Intel had the Pentium 4, that wasn't very fast, whereas the AMD CPUs were faster. But then since the kind of Core 2 days, or the Core CPU days, Intel was just way faster, because each instruction, so for each frequency, so for each clock, so the clock speed, like a 4 gigahertz or a 3 gigahertz CPU, that's how many times it can do an operation per cycle. The AMD CPUs just couldn't do as much in that cycle as the Intel CPUs could until now. And now the AMD ones are just better. So not only are they better multi-threaded, so those big workloads, but also single thread. And for games, many games are not multi-threaded, or at best they use 2 threads. So gamers still kind of preferred the Intel CPUs because they were still faster, but not anymore. With the 5000 series, you're going to get, not only is it going to be cheaper, you use less power, not run as hot, it's also faster and cheaper. So there's very little reason to buy, with the new generation of AMD CPUs, to buy an Intel CPU now. I don't know why you'd buy it. There's very little reason to get an Intel CPU for most people. There's very specific niches, like if you need the AVX 512 instruction set, which unless you know what it is, you don't need it. The Ryzen's are going to be better.
I have no idea what they are.
It's kind of like having a mini GPU on your CPU. It's like a certain, they call it an SMID or SIMD. It's like this very specific part of the CPU that's really good at doing parallel processing. So for like graphics intensive rendering, video encoding, that can help, but not many applications support that because it's really hard to program. So not many things actually use it, but when they do use it, you get a massive performance boost. So that and only Intel CPUs support that. Do you remember on the olden days there was MMX CPUs and MMX2?
Yeah,
it's that, but
yeah, right.
21st century. Yeah. So yeah, but Ryzen hasn't got that. So you don't get that performance boost. And some applications do support it on Intel, but
not many.
Not many. And again, if you know you need it, you know. I didn't mean to tell you. So
yeah, like it's still a different socket though, right? I'm like you're still getting different motherboards, and so whether you're locked in because of that or.
That said, pretty much every 2 years there's a new motherboard socket anyway. So if you're upgrading that often, like the current range of Intel CPUs won't fit in your motherboard from 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So you're gonna have to buy a new motherboard anyway.
Yeah.
And new RAM and probably a new SSD anyway. So
you may as well start again.
You may as well just decide what's best at the time rather than thinking what fits the current things that I have.
I know with the release of the RTX 30 series, there was a lot of conjecture about whether or not you actually had to have a motherboard that supported PCIe 4, but it turns out that they snuck it in just under the PCI 3 and the bandwidth available, and so like sort of maxing out the throughput that you can get out of those lanes. And then there's a potential, if you want to dig really deep, like loss of a couple of frames per second here and there because the actual RAM might be using some of the allotted lanes that the GPU's using off of the dual slots and all of this extra. Like, I mean, this is for like real extreme sort of people that are pushing or want that maximum experience all of the time. Like then. But the fear, the larger fear initially was that you were all going to have to upgrade your motherboards because you're going to need PCIe 4, which hasn't been the case. So when it comes to GPUs, like when we start comparing AMD, who's done an amazing job of catching up and exceeding NVIDIA in a lot of ways over the last few years. The only thing really up NVIDIA's sleeve at the moment is the whole ray tracing stuff and the RTX being ray tracing and the fact that a very small subset of games are being optimized for or being built that have ray tracing of some level in them. One of the big showcases being Minecraft, so which gets a lot of people over the line, or Fortnite.
I thought Minecraft wasn't a very graphically intensive game, was it?
It's not, but there's a version of it that NVIDIA's engineers have been working with like Microsoft's team to create this version that essentially turns ray tracing on and makes every surface a reflective one. It's actually quite incredible to see, like the difference of flicking it on and off, and what it can do. I got a chance to play with it at PAX, I think last year.
It wasn't this year.
No, it definitely wasn't this year. But it does make a huge difference. Like, and cool. To the point where it doesn't feel like Minecraft, because that's not Minecraft. Minecraft's like blocks and stuff. Whereas all of a sudden you have this light and shadow and reflection, and it doesn't. A lot of people see it for the first time and just kind of not freak out, but they're just like, maybe this isn't for me. But yeah, it's interesting to see what it can do. But if ray tracing isn't important, and it may very well not be important to you because it's not in a lot of titles, and if you know what you're playing, then the AMD GPUs, they are like superstars for like your return on investment.
Well, yeah, because they're just way cheaper. I mean, right now the NVIDIA GPUs, if you can find one to buy,
yeah,
they cost at least like $1,000 for those top end ones.
Yeah,
and the performance gap between the AMD range at the moment and NVIDIA one is not massive, so they're kind of better bang for buck. But the RTX 3000 series, if they weren't so out of stock and in demand, they would probably be a better buy because they're just a generation ahead of what AMD has right now. But you just can't buy them. Like, they're sold out for like 3 months at least.
Yeah.
And NVIDIA's CEO saying it could be 6 months until we catch up. So don't expect the price to drop for at least 6 months.
Yeah.
So,
and by that time they'll be talking about the 40 series.
AMD. Well, AMD has the RX 6000 coming soon. So they're going to announce that late October, I think. So soon. And that's going to be their new flagship GPU, all new design. So that'd be interesting to see how that manages to compete with NVIDIA stuff and at what price point they release that at.
Yeah. So at the Ryzen event, they showed off a few specs for it, like some 4K frames per second, like Gears of War was running at 73 frames per second. Call of Duty was running at 88 frames per second and 4K off the 6000 series, but the official announcement's on the 28th of October, so not too far away. But I guarantee they're cheaper, easily.
Yeah.
And essentially what's being used in the next console generation, it's just a version of AMD.
I wonder if that performance flow, because on the console you have to do a lot more optimizing to get perform, because I can target. I've got 25 million consoles out there with the same hardware specs. Like, you can tweak it. You can take advantage of these things a lot better, I assume, than on a PC.
Yeah.
Would that flow down to Windows PCs? There's optimizations. I'm not sure.
I don't think so. Not like you can't tweak the engine as much on that granular level, because PCs have so many variables associated with them. Yeah. So there's all these weird tricks that they've been doing for years on, depending on which generation it is. Like on PlayStation 3, there were weird ways of getting around and getting more performance out of things by shading things in a different way or rendering them differently. And I'm not a game developer, but there were a lot of stuff under the hood that you could do that they found out as the generations go on. That's why games always look better, 2-3 years after a console generation comes out, because they find all these ways of getting around or optimizing things to eke every ounce of performance out of the machine, which you just don't do on a PC because people upgrade and get a new one, and there's no problem. But I think between Apple, AMD, some democracy sausage being delivered over by Alphabet and the wing arm of them, that pretty much covers the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, unless there's social media crap like Facebook and Twitter. That's
the usual junk. Yeah.
Ruining society, blowing up democracy, installing fascism, whatever.
Yada yada yada. That's nothing we haven't already heard.
Yeah.
I put up a new review on Reckoner this week. If you are interested in some new wireless headphones, then AudioFly released the second generation wireless in-ear headphones. Not for you, Ant. Sorry, I know you don't like in-ear.
No.
The AFT2s. They were actually really good. I really liked the design of them, the look and feel of them. They were really stayed in my ear really well. They have this really nice little metal case that they pop in and out of. It's kind of about half the size of a glasses case. They were pretty good, and a half decent price point. They weren't AirPods Pro sort of level of cost. I'm just trying to scroll down and see exactly what they are now. Just under $200 at Amazon. So, and pretty good solid performance. Probably not the type of headphone you want to get if you listen to really bass heavy stuff constantly, but for an all-round type of headphone. Noise cancelling built in for phone calls. It uses some Qualcomm noise cancelling technology, which was really interesting.
Okay. I know. There's a thing called aptX, which is used for the sound transmitting, and that makes a big difference, because with headphones that don't support it, they use a compressed or because Bluetooth only has a certain amount of bandwidth.
Yeah.
I can tell a difference between the audio quality depending on what codec that they use.
These were really, really crisp in the sounds, like very top end sound, and you could really. It was like listening to headphones plugged into a machine. Like they were really solid. The weird thing is that they pair, as each bud has a pairing in your drop down. So you've got left and right, but you only connect to one of them.
Oh, so you can't send one song to the left, one song to the right.
Yeah, I tried. It didn't work, but yeah, it was really interesting. So I think though, if you're looking for sort of a good commuter headphone one that's easier to slip in your pocket and like have all day battery life out of it. They do 35 hours or 35 hours, I think, included with the charging case. So it's pretty solid performance, and like no problems using it to listen to music all day and get through that. So yeah, I really like it.
I guess for iPhone users, the real question is worth spending the extra $150 to get the AirPods Pro.
If you're on the phone a lot, the mics weren't great. So if you were someone who is constantly taking phone calls and I don't know, talking to Siri or dictating or something like that, like having the the electric toothbrush laser mic come out is a huge improvement over just an earbud. These ones are quite flush, so they sit really flush in my ear, which makes them look a lot better. Like I've got the Beats on at the moment, so I can hear you, and that sticks out a fair bit. But these ones sat quite flush, almost not to hearing aid levels, but like getting there. But that helps if it fits your ear and the shapes and so forth. And they stayed in really well when I went for a run, which is almost unheard of. Like AirPods, I cannot run with them. They're terrible. Yeah, for me. So yeah. But if you're interested, go read the full review. Put that up last week.
Nice.
So yeah, that's about it, I think.
Excellent. Yeah, I haven't got anything else.
No. All right.
No. I've got things to review that I haven't done. I still got the HP laptop.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, and I got a smartwatch as well. Sunto 7.
Sunto.
Yeah, which. All right, I'm not big on smartwatches in the first place. They send me the things that I hate. Like I don't like any headphones. I don't like smartwatches. Yeah, that's what they want me to review. So it's not going to be a very interesting review. It'll be quite basic because I haven't worn it much. I just don't wear it. Even when I had an Apple Watch, I hardly wore that as well. So
yeah,
I'm just not big on smartwatches. I just don't find them that useful.
I do have a Sonos Move sitting in the living room that I need to unbox and test that was sent. So that will be next cab off the rank. And the new soundbar, I actually bought that for myself from them. So the new play bar or whatever they call it.
Actually, speaking of things I've bought for myself, I bought in eBay's last sale a new monitor, a Xiaomi 34-inch monitor for $480. It is fantastic. Like it is a bargain. So if you need a new monitor and you want something that's a bit bigger than a 1080p or a 1440p, this is a 3440 by 1440, so it's like a wide curved screen.
Oh, yeah.
It's fantastic. Like if you just want one decent sized screen, not two 24s or two 27s.
Yeah.
For the price, is wonderful. Like the image quality is, like it's not 100% color accurate. Like you wouldn't use it if you're doing press work or video grading or photo editing. For an amateur photo editing, it's fine. But for pro editing, when you're going to print it or display it elsewhere, you probably wouldn't like it that much. But for day-to-day use, it looks wonderful. It works at 144 hertz. So
Damn.
Yeah, so I put it up to 144 on my desktop, and everything scrolls so smoothly.
Yeah.
The mouse cursor in Windows is just like butter. Like it's so nice. So for that price, that monitor, that's my new recommendation. So if someone asked me what monitor should I buy, I used to say a Dell UltraSharp 27-inch. Now it's this Xiaomi 34-inch.
I've got a 34-inch 1440p widescreen. But it's an Acer Predator, which was like I guess a gaming monitor. And I think I paid it'd be close to $1,000 a couple of years ago. Yeah. But I love it. Like I just that slight curvature as well. Curved TVs were the dumbest thing ever. But a curved wide screen where you're the center, it's really, really good. And I think it'd be really difficult for me to go back to a non-curved screen. Like over here where I am at the moment away from it, and just having a flat screen. I've got this giant like white. I've got one of the LG, USB and not USB Thunderbolt screens from work sitting in front of me. That's why I look like I'm anemic at the moment. It's just this
big
bathe of white light just coming on me. It's quite difficult, and I like have to constantly look over to my laptop screen, put my neck out and stuff like that. The curve is so beautiful, but for $480, that is
it's really cheap.
Bargain.
Yeah, it's a classic Xiaomi. Like it's just
good
quality stuff, super cheap, and I don't know how the box is all in Russian. I don't know. It's all the inside the box. The instructions are in multi languages. So there's English, German, French, all kind of stuff. But it's from the official Xiaomi store on Amazon or on eBay. So if it's not, it goes on sale very often. So if you subscribe to the Sizzle and pay for the Sizzle, whenever they're on sale, I mention it, but don't pay more than like $5.50 for it. Like you'll get it for way cheaper than $5.50 most of the time.
Display port?
Yeah, 2 display port, 1 HDMI, USB hub as well, and the stand that goes up and down, pivots, tilts.
Yep.
So it's a VA panel, not an IPS, but it still looks fine. Looks pretty good.
Yeah.
So I'm impressed by it. I've got it on my PC that I use for scanning and for games, and it's it's a bargain. That's my new monitor recommendation.
Sounds good. All right. Well, on that note, on the monitor recommendation of Anthony Ages, we might wrap it up.
Great gold.
Yeah. And that's what everyone's tuning in for. Just been waiting for that.
What monitor does this man, I don't know, want me to buy?
Why don't you let the good folks tuning in know where they can find out more about your good monitor recommendations?
thesizzle.com.au, where you can get a free trial of my newsletter. Every day goes out, tech news. And Decryption on Twitter, DECRYPTION.
I could actually include overlays for that now that...
That's too much effort.
And you can find out more about what I'm up to at Twitter at Rajdeut, RAJDEUT, or of course on the Reckoner website, reckoner.com.au, which you probably know about because you wouldn't be here otherwise. All right, on that note, thanks everyone for watching. We will maybe see you next time, maybe not. We'll see how it goes. Thanks for tuning in, and thanks for everyone that joined in the live chat. Thanks. Bye.